Welcome to Still with Purpose. This is Amanda and Christy.
Our goal is to dig deep and discuss real, raw subjects in pursuit of greater self-awareness, positive transformation and healing, and to link arms and journey with you to find purpose and passion in life. Hi, and welcome back to Still with Purpose. We're here today talking about the question, have you ever realized growth isn't about finding truth, but shedding lies? Amanda, I'm going to give our quote.
Spiritual growth demands honest self-reflection. Blame only delays true freedom. So growing in any area in our life is tough because we have to dismantle probably a false belief that we've run our lives with for probably a long time, actually. And if that was a false belief, then in a lot of ways we were living a false life. That doesn't sit well with most of us. Definitely doesn't sit well with me. In order to take that painful reality away or make it less, we naturally look for someone or something to blame shift onto. Yes, they were involved, but we also subconsciously chose them so we could justify our false beliefs.
Yikes.
Should I say that again?
Yeah.
In order to take that painful reality away or make it less, we naturally look for someone or something to blame shift onto. Yes, they were involved, but we also subconsciously chose them so we could justify our false beliefs.
So what's an example of that?
An example of that would be if I want to attract different people in my life, I'm going to have to look at, I'm the common denominator of all those relationships. I'm going to have to look at what is not going the way I would like it to be going and actually dissect what I've attracted that has fed my false belief about myself. So do I have a bunch of friends around me that speak death to me? Or do I have friends that, encourage and help me grow and change and start becoming the person I truly want to be?
And when you think about which side of that you're on, if you're on the side that you don't really love, then you're saying you tend to blame somebody in your life for that, right?
I think when I'm unhappy with my life, I am blaming someone or something else for that. Because if I was in true integrity with myself, I would be totally thrilled with what was happening in my life. There wouldn't be things missing. There would be just utter gratitude for where I'm at, instead of constantly looking at others or situations and comparing and envy, striving, all the unattractive qualities that we do when we're blame shifting.
Unless you're in that transition period, which maybe a lot of our listeners are at this point, where you're unhappy with your life, but you realize you got to make changes. And so you're in that stage of trying to grow and gain understanding about how to grow. And maybe you're in that transition period where you're not yet thrilled with your life, but you're taking accountability for it.
Totally. And there's a piece of that when you drop down into integrity with yourself, you have a hope that wasn't there and an energy level that wasn't there before. Because when you're blame shifting, you're focusing on others instead of what you need to be doing. When you're in integrity with yourself, you've got a game plan that you do not have it all together. For me, I'm giving it up to God and we have a game plan. That's my hope. It's not a hope. That is the hope that keeps me alive and moving, instead of focusing on all the things I don't have or all the friendships that are not going well or the relationships that are struggling or any of that. Now I'm in integrity and can have open conversations of like, hey, this is where I'm going. It might not be where you want to go. So let's talk about it. This is the kind of support I need in order to do this.
That makes sense.
The saying, you become who you hang around, is very true. But even worse, you choose who you hang around in order to play small and justify, or you choose to be painfully accountable until you get to where you truly want to be. And sometimes that's really lonely. Some of the content that's going through my feed right now, hashtag wise or algorithm wise, is it's kind of a lonely game to change up your whole beingness into a whole different person, because the person that got you here so far is not the person that's going to get you to where you want to go. So the character growth has to be there. And it's lonely because some past
Hmm.
People aren't going to be on board with it. They liked you as a people pleaser, or, we've talked about that in the past.
Hmm.
How their need of you or your worth, possibly your value in their life has switched up. That's a problem for some people.
Well, we've also talked about getting rid of the mask. And part of the question that we asked was, have you ever realized growth is not about finding truth, but shedding lies? That's getting rid of your mask that some people may not be thrilled with what's left when the mask is gone, which, the lies that we're shedding.
And we're portraying, especially with a mask, total lies of who we aren't. I read something somewhere where we actually become the person that the person standing in front of us desires, not at all who we are. We're just going around to each person and becoming that person. And I can see that, especially in my humor. I can bring this kind of humor in this group and this kind of humor in that group, and I switch it up for sure. And that's part of reading a room, but I really strive to be the same person in all rooms. But this group might think I'm not as fun anymore, right?
That's interesting because I've mentioned before how sometimes I feel like the professional role that I have has shaped a lot of my personality or my behaviors, good, bad, or indifferent. But I also feel like in this context, having to adapt to another person's working style, and especially if it's clients or customers or bosses or leaders, that you have to adapt your own style to have a better working relationship with them. You find yourself becoming exactly what you're saying, becoming what they need from you. And then that kind of lingers over into your personal life, or has mine, where you feel like that's just natural to do in all situations. I'm going to become what style this person that I'm just having a conversation with at a social event, what I feel like they might be needing most from me.
And I think that's exhausting at the end of the day.
And I don't even think I've realized half the time that I'm even doing it. But then you leave a function, or you go home and you're just exhausted because you haven't just allowed yourself to be authentic and to roll with things. It's been, I don't know if the word performing is accurate, but striving. We talk a lot about just striving, and that is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. If we could just show up in a room. And actually, I don't know. I think for me personally, I go into rooms, and when someone asks how you are, you would probably not go into a whole spiel about what's really going on in your life, right? So we cut that way down. But I think that's been a pendulum swing over to, I'm not going to speak how I'm doing at all, except to a couple people. And then that's not really fair. That's not really an honest portrayal of who I am in each environment, when I could be more vulnerable. But in a work environment, there's no time for vulnerability almost. But responsible vulnerability could be like, hey, I'm really struggling and I'm totally present for this project or what we're doing. Maybe we can talk about it later. I think it's pretty important to look at the people that you're hanging around, and do they have the qualities you actually desire, or do they excuse your mediocrity and vices? Of course, if you want to numb out, you set of friends you're going to go hang out with. If you want to be incredibly negative, you know who to call. If you want to be depressed, and well, I mean, most people just isolate, but if you want to feed the flame of whatever fire you're cultivating or stoking, you know exactly who to call for that.
And then I wonder, though, later on, do we blame those people? Probably.
I
Right?
would say so. Because then we go, well, they're not really that great for me, but I chose to hang with them.
Mm-hmm.
I chose everything that I did. But ultimately, instead of blame shifting into any other human, we are at choice to say no and choose out. But a lot of times don't, because it could hurt a friendship, or it could seem, I think in the Christian realm, we're told strive to be like Jesus and wanting to get his character. Well, that's not condoning sin on all levels, but it's also that whole scripture, there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. And at the same time, there's conviction that comes with being a person that's striving to do this in life. Well, I can't win. Now I am convicting you because I'm choosing something that works for me better. That's a really tough situation to be in.
But I think we always talk about just take it to God, and we've got to be true to ourselves and what we think God is calling us to do and what we're being convicted of by God. So we can't feel guilty about how that affects somebody else. I don't think God's ever going to convict us to do something or be something or live in a way that would harm anyone else. So if it
Yeah.
is bothering someone else, then that's probably not the reason, right? It could be something that's happening in their life that's making them feel bad or less or being convicted, like you're saying.
I have friends that do things that I don't do, but we still hang out. We go outside, we get outside, and we just let each other be ourselves instead of going into mass judgment around it. My goal isn't to change anyone. My goal is to be so grounded in who I am that they just naturally want to be different because they're seeing it be a positive influence in my life, not because I critically judged them, right?
I love how you said get outside. I think that being out in nature, that's when it's easiest to drop the mask, drop the lies, drop the blaming. It's you and it's the animals, the plants, all the things that are natural in their own regard. There's nothing false about it. And so it's just easy to be yourself. And so I think that when you're with a group of people, it's probably easiest in that setting to be able to understand the authentic parts of people that you're having situations or conversations with.
I agree with that. I think I can't think of one hike or one outdoor excursion that I've done that didn't include a very deep conversation because all the noise is gone. All the distractions are gone. And it's just like letting down. You're also putting your body in a position where it's overriding your brain because you're exerting yourself. And that tends to shut your brain off, which I love because now I'm in my heart and thinking through clearly. These are business women I hang out. We're all self-employed and we talk business, everything. And some of our best ideas have come out of just being in nature.
Yeah.
And those relationships serve me more, even though we might not have the exact same values. I don't have the exact same values with any human on the earth, but we just don't come from a place of judgment. It's just like, hey, this is who I am and this is what I bring to the table. So if that's positive in your life, awesome. Let's keep doing this. If it's not, then we need to make a choice here. But I know one time, actually the last hike I did this season with those guys, I was a mess. I could not pull my head out. I was super negative. All this just crap was coming out of my mouth and we haven't gone since. And I had to come back and be like, hey, I need to apologize. That was probably not worth your time. There's a point of we need to let down and not have our mask on, but there's also a point of that was so negative. Like I wanted to go home 10 minutes in. And I wasn't wrong when I reached out. I was reading that situation correctly. That was a total drain for them. And it's just come clean with stuff like that instead of let it affect your relationship for months or whatever.
You need a redemption hike.
We haven't seen each other since that hike, but we're actually going out tonight.
Oh, good.
But it just made me laugh because I'm like, I'm not reading this wrong. I created that, so I need to come back. Even if it's nothing, isn't it worth your friendship to double check and make sure we are still good? Yeah, I think it is too.
And I think about too, you were saying some of the best conversations happen when you're out on hikes. I think back to when we used to camp a lot. Some of the best conversations were around a campfire. Like you're saying, no distractions. One topic goes to the next. And you have this sense of carefreeness when you're out there. Because for me, I'm not in front of a computer or even hopefully don't have my phone in my hand. So to get outdoors is huge. And you don't feel like you're in that blame mode when you're out there because it's like you and nature.
I think that when you are choosing to do physical activity, you already are choosing integrity for your health. And then that just rolls into, I'm going to choose to be responsible for my actions. I'm going to choose to be responsible for my words. I want to keep these friendships and I want to grow closer to them.
So I want to hit on one thing that you were saying. When you do physical activity, you feel accomplished, right? You feel good about yourself. It's productive. I feel that way when I wake up after staying outside and camping. You wake up and it's the morning and it's like a little bit back to our wild side and I did it and it's a beautiful morning. You know what I mean? That sense of renewal when you're outdoors. What a sense of just ownership, productiveness, and individual goal conquering, I guess, is how it feels.
And nothing's asking for your attention. You don't have to run and go do something. I think the busyness of humans at this point is kind of, for me, it's kind of upsetting to hang around incredibly busy person that cannot set aside a chunk of time.
Agreed.
So I love women's weekends. I love all the things that shut down everything except connection. And I think we're really lacking that in this world now. And it's almost scary to some people, I've noticed.
Because nobody knows what it's like anymore to do that in this busy world that we live in. It's just very unknown to people. What would it be like to unplug and get away for a woman, maybe with a group of other women? What would it be like to go with the same goal in mind, to make connections and to talk about deeper things and have some ahas, hopefully coming out of it? Like nobody finds the time or carves out the time to do that anymore.
And I can guarantee it's not scary. It's so awesome. I'm a super fan and always will be of just getting women together and hanging out.
And men too, like men should do that on their side. I don't know if you want to mix men and women. Maybe that's more of a couples retreat, but anybody, it's good to do.
Absolutely. Guys get that when they start going into hunting and stuff like that. Like
yeah, they do. They get to connect more on like that animalistic
testosterone
level. Yeah.
man weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they need it. They deserve it too, you know?
We all do. I think sadly, men get to call it hunting. Women don't have anything. Like we don't have a hiking season, you know? I wish we did. We should.
That's actually kind of funny because we all get to find the things that fuel us and refresh us. Maybe guys don't think that would be fun to sit around in a circle and talk life, but I think they end up doing it in their own way.
I think so too.
So going back to the quote, spiritual growth demands honest self-reflection. That means almost as a non-negotiable to create this for yourself. And that's what we're talking about, is to self-reflect. And if that's scary to do alone, a lot of people don't want to be alone with their thoughts, but you could start out with small things. Like I said, these hikes have been extremely helpful for my groundedness and my hope. At least I'm out there doing something I really enjoy pretty regularly. Growth demands boundaries, self-reflection, waking up. You're not asleep, dead, walking through the world, stopping the madness, and possibly changing out your whole friend circle. You will be called names and judged possibly because your new self will be quite hypocritical to the past life you've lived. I'm just going to repeat this. You will be called a hypocrite because your past life does not match with what you're trying to do. And you do look like a hypocrite because the stuff that came out of your mouth did not line up with the person you're trying to be today. And so just own it. It's looking like hypocrisy. You're correct. It is hypocrisy.
But I would also call it perhaps forgiveness. So the Bible teaches that once God forgives you, he casts your sins as far as the east is from the west. In other words, right, those sins are forgotten. And yes, you did them. That's never going to change, but they're not remembered anymore. And so those friends that you have around you who remember the type of person or the things that you did before, they may not let you forget that and call you a hypocrite. But if you've received forgiveness from God and you feel that forgiveness in your heart and you've forgiven yourself, you should allow yourself to cast them away and not stick around the people who are going to bring them back up all the time.
And the reason they need to bring it up, the reason they need to see that you are not this angelic human is because it convicts their own stuff.
They're rationalizing their own behaviors because you did it too.
Because now, what, are you holier than thou? We all know the phrases of when we've tried to get out of the pit in some way and be a different person. No, you're sarcastic, Amanda. No, I'm not, actually. 90% of the time it is wit. And if I am in sarcasm, I notice it right away because it's so unattractive on other people and myself. And I hurt people when I'm in sarcasm. So now I don't care to do it at all. Mm-hmm. And it's really quite gross to be around. But now, honestly, I just don't go out. If I'm in a foul place, I shut my mouth and I stay at home. If I have nothing good to offer the world, then stay at home. Mm-hmm. That's how I've done it. But I'm self-employed. unemployed. I don't have to constantly people all day long.
Well, and it kind of goes back to take care of your own self. Don't worry about others. We were taught that when we're little.
Yeah.
And I'd said it to my kids countless times when they're arguing with each other. Worry about yourself. But it's so true when people start commenting on, well, you used to do this or you used to do that, or how can you believe this now? Because I know you used to say this. Just worry about your own self.
What's crazy though, if you were being maskless and actually answered correctly, if someone said that to you, you'd be like, I actually used to numb out everything because I was in the dredges of society and I hated my life and I hated who I saw in the mirror.
And you know
Do they
what?
want to hear that response? No, I don't think they do.
Well, if that type of conversation comes up at a social gathering, it would be less exhausting to say that. We talked about a little bit ago. It'd be less exhausting to say that than it would be to try to figure out what they wanted to hear or adapt your answer to make the conversation go smoother.
We're constantly trying to make people feel comfortable, just like we talked about people pleasing, so that we can control the room and everyone's happy.
I am the worst offender of that. I hope that someday I can be so at ease at saying I needed to take more accountability and personal responsibility and change some things in my life. We all know it's so hard to do.
Wouldn't that be awesome though? If
It would be.
had the guts to say something like that. It was completely the darkest time of my life.
It's also having the guts to do it is one thing. But I think if you gave me like, okay, I'm going to ask you this question and I'll give you 5 minutes to prepare, I think I'd have the guts to say that. But if I'm just in a conversation and caught off guard, and I don't want to say off guard in a bad way, just not expecting a question like that, my natural instinct is to make everything seem great and rosy. I think it'll be awesome when naturally I can let what's in my soul come out of my mouth without trying to run interference.
Because it sets you up for judgment, to say the truth.
And that's the fear that we're all worried about being judged.
Owning your hypocrisy because sloughing off the version of you no longer desire to be will take possibly a complete ego death and create an identity crisis. Once you are true to yourself on this level, it's impossible to not have a spiritual awakening and true freedom, because your integrity is finally aligned with your words and deepest desires is what occurs. I know in the past, well, my last marriage, I ended up staying in the chaos because it allowed me to blame something and be unpleased and unsatisfied in my own life, when really, why couldn't I choose out of blaming and choose the life I wanted instead? Well, when you're in a marriage, that's got some other things attached to it. You're making decisions for several people. But when I did finally step into integrity with my true self, a lot of loss happened. And I think that's what's scary too for people to make any changes, because if these are the friends you've had or family you've had your whole life, how in the world would you even dream that you could be a different person?
And I think when you do start making those choices, whatever relationships, whether it's friendships, marriages, you've got to have both people on board with making those changes. And I doubt that there's ever a relationship where both people don't need to make changes. I don't think it's ever just one. If there's an addiction on one side, there may be enabling or blame shifting on the other side. So I think in a relationship, you've got to have both sides on board.
For sure. If someone chooses out of me, there's really not much I can do about that. And that's what you're drawing the line in the sand on. This is who I feel like God's calling me to be. And these are the qualities I need to shift and change to be the best me possible. And you could have several people that are not down with that. And it might not come out in comments, but it will come out in all of a sudden they're not available or they just start shifting out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be okay. And if you're close to God and spending time with Him, you have to trust that He's doing that for a reason, instead of trying to keep every relationship that you've ever gained in your lifetime in a healthy spot, because that's nearly impossible, in my opinion.
When those relationships do start falling away, I don't think we have to do much to make it happen. If we're trying to be close with God and follow the direction that we're receiving from God and from God's word, then naturally those relationships will start falling away, and God's making that happen. I don't think we have to exert much effort at all. We just have to be okay with what God is doing in our lives.
I agree. Just a simple example of that would be if I choose to overhaul my whole eating patterns, it affects people in my family, right? So it's cool to get them invested and enrolled in the vision instead of just pressuring them to be all of a sudden gluten-free and no dairy, no gluten, whatever it is that you're shifting largely in the eating department. All of a sudden it does change things. Just that simple thing can affect the restaurants you go out to eat, the things you go do, because now that's not offered or that's not part of your meal plan. And if your friendships can't hang with that, then you either start to do things together that match up with that, or they're on board and they'd love to change their style too, or you figure out something else you can do together, or the friendship probably has run its course. That's just a minor example, but it makes a lot of sense in all the choices that we're making. When I posted something similar to this idea that we're discussing today, there was kind of a discussion about how growth is so painful and why we don't do it. And I wanted to read to you what one of my friends put because I thought it was pretty powerful. You just called out the exact reason growth feels like death, because part of us has to die. And it's easier to point fingers than to admit we chose the comfort of limitation over the pain of leveling up. I've walked that road dragging old beliefs like they were the world's last food supply, when really they were just weights I chained to myself. And you're right. When I started cutting ties and setting boundaries, people got uncomfortable. But I didn't come this far to be liked by my past. I came to be free, owning the hypocrisy of who I was versus who I'm becoming. That's a savage kind of honesty most people never touch. I just thought that was a beautiful comment. So that was from a friend of mine that just was going back and forth on one of my thoughts one day. And I thought that was pretty dang powerful.
That last sentence, owning the hypocrisy of who I was versus who I'm becoming. That's huge. That's what we're talking about. People will call you hypocrite because of what you did in the past. You've got to own that in order to continue going where you're going to become who you want to be.
And it makes people uncomfortable because if you don't think that lifestyle's cool anymore or serves you anymore, it inevitably makes a person feel like, well, if they don't choose this lifestyle or attitude or whatever take on life, then there must be something wrong with me, because I actually respect her and want her in my life. But now I'm in a place of that's not serving her anymore to her best self. And I've actually been a pawn in her mediocrity.
That's interesting. If you have people that are pulling away from you, or if I have people that are pulling away from me, that deserves self-reflection to say, what have I been a part of that they now feel like they've got to grow out of?
Let's flip this to the other side. If I'm being so hypocritical in my newfound love for Jesus and Christianity, and I'm such a big turnoff to people that have never seen me come from that standpoint, first of all, now there's a space of like complete judgment instead of really just staying clean and pure on you have a lot to fix with God. Just because you have a deeper relationship with Him does not mean you have any say on anyone else's life, judgment wise.
Yeah.
It's hard work to change. And some of the blame shifting ends up being, well, they're having a great, fun life. Why am I working so hard on mine? This is hard work and no one else is working on themselves. That's actually one of my sentences. Is anyone else working on themselves this hard? Does it even matter? Does it even make a difference? And that's why doing projects like this and, having a book out there in the world, it's such high accountability for me to show up and keep growing, because I don't want my podcast or my work, my content to be hypocritical, even though it's nearly impossible to not be a hypocrite when you keep growing and sloughing off the old self.
Part of growth is understanding that we are all human. We all make mistakes. All can live from our flesh. So I think if we come from that stance while we're growing, we shouldn't be looked on as hypocrites. We should be looked on as acknowledging that we're in the same boat. We used to be less emotionally and spiritually mature as we are today. And we've all started from a place of not at all.
I've not been called a hypocrite to my face. place. Let's be really clear. I can just guess based on what I'm judging of myself that I have been a hypocrite in my past or yesterday. But I think the important thing to remember is just that coming from a place of vulnerability and owning personally responsible my actions and my things that come out of my mouth, my heart, that keeps it very open and vulnerable and real instead of I've arrived anywhere and you need to go ahead and listen to me because I've figured it out. That's just not a place I come from.
No.
I have a very similar theory about that. And that's why we're good together on this podcast, because we just do not have it figured out. We are hoping to help someone with something we just got an aha on last week. It's not like I have a degree in any of this stuff. So I would hope out of anything people hear from our content is that your honesty and vulnerability with where you're at right now actually is more powerful than anything else that could come out of your mouth.
Or ours.
Do you want to talk about some of the top reasons we don't want to spiritually grow?
Numbing the pain of accountability, but also keeps us from healing. And when we blame, we hand over our power. That's an interesting thought. When you blame, you hand over your power. That's true, because you're saying, well, it's out of my hands because so-and-so did it. I didn't have a choice. Yeah, we know it's not true. We've said everything is because of our choices, right? True spiritual maturity is taking it back even when the truth hurts. And that's what we're saying, is owning that hypocrisy or facing some of the false beliefs. And blame creates spiritual stagnation. We stay circling the same mountain waiting for someone else to change so we can feel better.
Another one is the death of the false self. Growth doesn't just feel like death. It is death of everything untrue. Our beliefs, identities, coping mechanisms, and even relationships. Another reason is the cost of freedom. It demands the surrender of excuses. The moment we stop blaming, we cannot be the victim any longer. And quite frankly, being a victim gets a lot of attention. There's a plus in being a victim. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand that, really think that statement through. What do I get out of being a victim? Because you get something out of it, or else you wouldn't be one. Being accused of being a hypocrite. Most people are afraid of being seen as hypocritical, but when you're evolving, hypocrisy is evidence you're choosing out of the old self. You are a hypocrite because you no longer do anything you used to.
So it's okay to be a hypocrite. That's probably part of it. Hypocrisy and hypocrite have a really negative connotation. But what we're saying here is that it can be a positive thing, because after you grow, you're not going to do the same things you did before, which that's a positive thing.
But come at this growth thing as with humor, because you could absolutely go to a party with old people, old friends that knew your old stuff and your old self and be like, yeah, that was totally me. Totally. Oh, no. And I never felt in integrity with who I was. But now I have so much accountability. I'm choosing some different life-giving things that help me function at a higher level. It doesn't have to be an insane judgment statement. It can just like put some humor back into your life, because you should almost laugh that you're a hypocrite, because we all are, all of us. And I think one of my favorite quotes, and this is a podcast, probably one of our first ones, everything I judge gives me the opportunity to be a hypocrite in the future. And it's so true. Everything I've judged harshly, I have come full circle on. It's been kind of annoying.
Yeah, but you can turn that annoyance into comic relief.
Instead of being run by your ego that someone might judge you in your changes, be run by humor of, isn't this crazy how I acted? It did not serve me at all.
That's a good challenge. Maybe for the week, like next time you're in a situation that feels similar to that, just to go easy on yourself and be a little more lighthearted about it. It's a good challenge for me, because I tend to be hard on myself and judgmental of myself. So if we can laugh it off, so should they. And we're all human.
Laughing it off, you're not incredibly serious about your changes, but just we need to laugh more, because we make a lot of mistakes, but we also do a lot of really cool things.
I don't mean laugh it off in the sense of minimize it, not at all, but almost like, how could I not see it before? You know, thank God I've grown.
Or isn't it amazing we're still friends? after all the things I've gone through, or turn it into a gratitude. Thank you so much for walking through all of the things I've chosen in life.
Yeah.
It really means a lot to me. You can totally change up a whole conversation by just, instead of being easily offended and your ego's like high, trying to self-protect, you can just be like, yeah, I'm a total hypocrite. I'm surprised you're even friends with me still, because that was a horrible stage of my life.
And it might be that it's not a friend who's chosen to stay around. It might be a family member. And so I could see, especially family gatherings, when you see someone that you haven't seen in a long time, and it's not always by choice, that'd be a good situation to take on a more lighthearted approach. Speaking of the week, let's talk about some reflection questions to go with that through the week. First one is, who would you be if you stopped blaming anyone for where you are right now? And where in your life are you pretending not to know the truth? And how much of your identity is built on who you had to be, not who you want to become?
That should be enough to journal about.
Hope everyone has a great week journaling on that, and hope to see you next time.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we hope you have a phenomenal week.
Until our next episode, find more content and social links at stillwithpurpose.com.